continues with the team that covers the Twin Cities and all of Minnesota. This is Eyewitness News at 6.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Stan Turner along with Ruth Spencer. Well, part of the Arctic cold came down our way, south to Minnesota today, Ruth.
But there was certainly enough chill left in the Arctic for Jason Davis. He's in the Canadian town of Resolute, Northwest Territories. That's 2,400 miles north of the Twin Cities. He's been covering the beginning of Will Steger's assault on the ice off Ward Hunt Island, the start of the 500-mile push to the North Pole.
Yes, and we have some broadcast history to make here tonight.
Yes.
We now have Jason live via exclusive satellite from Resolute. That's farther north than any previous live satellite in broadcast history. Jason, give us a little sampling, if you can, of the temperatures you've been enduring there in recent times.
Well, right now I guess it's about 40 below Celsius, and you know the scale changes, so it's probably 45 or something like that below Fahrenheit. But you know there's no wind, Stan, and when there's no wind, you can almost stand this. But it's been very cold here. It was 50 below last night with 35-mile-an-hour winds. That was vicious. You know, travel here is really something. Travel in the summer in the Arctic here is difficult. There are no roads. In the winter, it's almost impossible. The Steger people are traveling to the North Pole by dog sled, but they're spending $60,000 in chartered aircraft just to get to the start. They are the workhorses of the Arctic, reliable go-anywhere aircraft called Twin Otters. Over the past few days, they've been shuttling the Steger Polar Expedition from Weather Station Eureka to the ice of the Polar Sea. Tons of food and equipment and 50 dogs, loaded and unloaded several times before the final destination near Ward Hunt Island, the most northern piece of land in Canada. Yesterday, we were there when the advance party of 6 began to carve a path through the broken sea ice. This huge field of rubble is the first major barrier on the way to the pole. The task is to get 5 sleds loaded with at least 1,000 pounds each across this nightmare. Canadian Brent Bodie, spurning synthetic materials, wears a full suit of caribou skin to beat the cold. It's his dogs that have the doubtful honor of breaking trail. Using a selection of heavy tools that includes a couple of axes they sort of borrowed from the Frobisher Bay Fire Department, the team have to cut their way through the convoluted ice. It's back-breaking work that forces them to shed outer clothing even with temperatures colder than 40 degrees below zero. Even a man of legendary strength and stamina, Ironman Bob Mantell from Alaska, has mixed feelings about the task that lays ahead.
Well, I guess I'm at the same time optimistic and also somewhat appalled at what we're facing. I think it's certainly possible, but it's going to be a lot of hard work. Yeah.
They say the broken and smashed sea ice reaches for at least 60 miles into the polar ocean. And when they get that far, they'll stand and face the shear zone, where the ice is shifting and moving beneath their feet. All that, and Expedition co-leader Paul Shirkey of Ely, Minnesota, says it could be worse.
Well, you imagine the worst because you want to set yourself up for the most difficult thing you can face, so it won't be a big surprise. I guess it's given that it's not as bad as I was counting on.
Yeah, well, he says it's not as bad as all that. It's pretty bad to me, but they're very confident, very, very excited. The 8 of them are now on the ice. I know for sure that as the sun goes down here, and in the Arctic, when the sun goes down, it doesn't really turn dark. As you can see, it's unlike the tropics where it turns dark instantly. Here, the twilight lasts for many, many hours, and the sun set actually about an hour ago, and this is the kind of light you get. And the team were very excited about this because they had visions of themselves chopping through that ice with headlamps on. Well, of course, with the sun coming up at about 9:30 in the morning and lasting until now, they're getting about 8 or 9 hours out on the ice, actually making progress, and that's an exciting start for them. Stan?
Jason, with all their conditioning and all their training, seeing what we just saw, it looks like an impossible task. Now that you've been with them and have seen that, do you think they can make it? Do you really?
Well, I think they can make it. They are really trained. They really worked up for this. As a matter of fact, they looked at that ice and they said, it's easy. This part's a cinch. What they are concerned about is reaching the ridges which may be 30, 40, 60 feet high. Yes. And if they run into those, it could be a serious problem. But their greatest fear, they keep saying, is the open water they may face when they get close to the pole.
All right, and when they reach that shear that you mentioned, the shear ice, when do you think that will be? Like, any guess,
What?
any estimation?
Well, a couple of weeks. And that's kind of hairy because they pitch their tents at night, and during the night the ice could actually part beneath their tent, and they could find themselves in the Arctic Ocean. And that's no joke. That could be that could indeed be life-threatening, and they have to be very careful of that.
Jason, take good care of yourself. Please give our best to your photographer there, our photographer, Don Friedel, too. You're doing an excellent job.
Kim and Harmon is my photographer tonight.
All right, okay. Well, say hello to Don anyway, all right?
I am amazed at the clarity of that signal.
This is truly exciting.
I hope everyone at home realizes we're making broadcast history, and they're part of it by watching.
That is exciting stuff, no doubt about it.
Just imagine being 800 miles above the Arctic Circle where it's 45 degrees below zero. Your eyelashes, nose, and lips covered with ice. Your only reason for being there, to make history. Hello again, I'm Bob Vernon, along with Ruth Spencer, and at the top, a hardy bunch who are starting their way toward the North Pole.
Jason Davis has been covering the Will Steger expedition. He's in the Canadian town of Resolute, Northwest Territories. That's 2,400 miles north of the Twin Cities. He's been covering the beginning of Will Steger's assault on the ice off of Wardhunt Island. That's the start of the 500-mile push to the North Pole. Jason joins us now live via exclusive satellite from Resolute. That's farther north than any previous live satellite hookup in broadcast history. Jason, are you there?
Yeah, and don't we know it? It's cold out there. It's about 40, 45 below zero, but it's a lot colder up on the ice. And we were up there yesterday, and I tell you, Ruth, it's really hard for me to describe adequately what it's really like up there. It's only 500 miles north of here, but one of the team members described it accurately as another planet. It's like where the world ends. A few miles of flat, landlocked ice where the Polar Expedition have their base camp. Then, like a wall, the smashed and mangled barrier they call the ridges. This is where constant movement of tides and winds create a rubble field of ice. To get to the North Pole, the 7 men and 1 woman that are the Steger expedition will have to cross this. Satellite reports show it extends for 60 miles, and the teams have to drive their 50 dogs very hard. When fully loaded, the sleds will weigh over 1,000 pounds each. Before Canadian Brent Bodie can come on through with his team, the ice has to be cleared. Every inch of the way, the team will have to carve a path using huge axes. It's slow going.
It's going to be tough, but it looks passable. It's kind of a mixture of ice pans and mixed in with rough ice. We just chop our way through the rough ice and travel quickly on the ice pans, and we should be able to progress 5 to 10 miles a day.
If it's tough on the humans, it must be at least equally hard on the dogs, but they seem to pull with a will, straining together at a command. The 16-foot sled dragging and jamming in the broken ice like a huge anchor. When they break through onto a flat ice floe, they spring forward so fast, it catches everyone by surprise. The dogs will work like this for 12 hours a day for a couple of months. They'll sleep outside every night in temperatures that usually drop to 50 degrees below zero after a supper of just 1.5 pounds of dog food. But dog expert Brent Bodie says his team is used to it.
I've never had any of my dogs ever get frostbitten or have any serious problems with exposure. They've been living up here their ancestors have been living up here for thousands of years, so through the process of natural selection, only the toughest and the best equipped for this climate have survived, so these dogs are definitely right at home in this area.
The aim is to get the entire expedition from here to the North Pole without supply drops from the air. That's why the loads are so heavy, but it'll become easier as they go, consuming food and burning excess sleds for warmth. If they are successful, it will be largely because of this man, 41-year-old Will Steger of Ely, Minnesota.
And the main thing is the temperatures are about 50 below now. They're holding the ice solid. It's a little cold and inconvenient sometimes sleeping and dressing and so forth, but we're all used to the 50 below temperature. It's no surprise to us at all.
No, so there's no risk you're going to make it to the pole, right? You're going to make it to the pole?
I don't see anything that's going to stop us.
Will Steger says it'll take at least 2 weeks for him and his companions to carve their way through the 60 miles of broken ice in front of them. And what do they have to look forward to? The shear zone comes next, where the ice is in constant motion. Jason Davis with photographer Don Friedel on the Polar Sea near Woodhunt Island.
You may have noticed that Brent Bodie in particular was wearing skins, and my boots are caribou skin too, and they're the warmest possible thing that you can wear on the ice. The only trouble with these boots is that they are not tan. They're native tan. They just scrape the fat off and eat it, and I think they left much of the caribou inside them, but they are the warmest thing, and Brent Bodie is wearing them, and he intends to wear them all the way to the pole.
Yes, Jason, I was wondering all throughout this coverage, perhaps this is a question for Dr. Michael Breen, how come your eyes are all right unprotected? Or do they have some kind of special ointment in them or something that you're using?
No, they wear goggles, and we wear goggles when the wind is blowing into our faces, and that's about the best protection you get. But you can freeze your eyeballs, sure.
All right. Jason, thank you for that report. The signal is beautiful, by the way. History-making signal there. Jason will, of course, be providing updates on the expedition throughout the entire weekend.
And in other news tonight, Ruth, an apartment fire that has left